Hello, and welcome to the Plenty of Positivity podcast. I am your host, Courtney Beck, and today we have a very special guest, Dr. Kimberly Horn. Dr. Kimberly Horn is a nationally recognized research psychologist, a best-selling author, and a keynote speaker. It is my absolute pleasure and honor to welcome Dr. Kimberly Horn.
Courtney, I'm honored to be here. You have been such an avid, active supporter over the last year, and I am just touched and so honored to have this time with you.
Well, thank you so much for your kind words. I cannot describe how excited I am for this moment. We have been waiting for this moment, and I have to offer a big congratulations on your book, best-selling book, Friends Matter for Life. I'm absolutely thrilled for you with the success that this book has provided, the positive impact. And I could definitely attest to it. We are going to certainly get into this book right away. But first, I would love to begin with an introduction and a background of yourself.
Yeah, sure. Um, I look forward to chatting more in depth about the book. And uh, I'm a longtime academic scientist. I've been in the academy now for, it's hard to believe, but nearly 30 years. Obviously, I started very young,
Yeah.
but I think it's important to go back a little bit in my story to understand my journey. And I was raised in a very small, close knit community in Virginia, Southwest Virginia, in a little town called Vinton, which is just outside of Roanoke, Virginia. And we'll chat a little more about that, but I know we have some dots to connect there too.
Absolutely.
But I think that um, you know, even starting at a very young age, because I was raised in a close knit community, connection was really important, and I think that it was a community where neighbors looked after each other, and friendships ran long and deep. And in fact, my closest friends are my friends from my hometown. And all these years later, 50 plus years later, we are still extremely close. And I think I learned from my elders that we are our brothers and sisters keepers. And my mom loves to tell the story that in elementary school, I would come home literally having given children less fortunate than me the clothing off my back. And I think I learned that mentality of kindness and connection, and that caring is a verb. It is an action that um, is necessary for helping us all be healthier and happier people. And I tell this story because I think I learned the importance of those roots of connection at a very early age. And it came from the elders in my community and watching my family and being a part of that as a child. And I can remember very clearly a very early memory that there were people in this world that were lonely and disconnected and less fortunate. And I think that's always been a driving force for my trajectory. And so I just wanted to give you a little piece of that, a little piece of my background, so that you understand the kind of the starting place.
Absolutely beautiful background. And I have to really reiterate what you were talking about with the idea just even of human connection and how important connection is today. We'll certainly get into it, but you bring it up with the epidemic that has been declared with isolation and loneliness. And so the fact that your book comes out at such a perfect time, Dr. Horn, I cannot wait to highlight all of these connections, literally the topic of connection, but how this actually kind of infiltrates through just the whole idea, the epidemic that has occurred with isolation and loneliness. But first, I do have to mention when you were speaking, and we certainly had spoke about this before, but there is such a literally a connection here. We would figure out that even my family goes back, grew up in Pennsylvania, both mom and dad. And most recently, when we talk about Roanoke, Virginia, my husband and I took a trip. We flew into Roanoke, Virginia. We actually would stay there one night on the end of our trip, but we also were in West Virginia. And I know that is where your start was,
Mhm.
WU. And my father went there too.
That I did not know.
True story.
Wow.
He is so passionate about WVU. Loves it.
Blue and gold and runs through our veins, right?
So incredibly true. I had to bring that up because really like the states, like I said, when we were talking about Pennsylvania and Virginia, and most recently, that was really my first time, as well as my husband's first time going to Virginia as well. But I mean, both for that matter, West
Mhm.
Virginia and Virginia. So I was like, no doubt I had to bring this up at the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a beautiful region. You mean I grew up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, it's sort of hugged along the lines of Appalachia, and it is an area that has just remained a part of my passion and service, my whole career. And there have been times where I thought I was moving away from it, but I never move away. I mean, it is no matter where I have lived or where I have worked, it has just stayed in my heart.
And to your point, when we were there, just even speaking in general, but when you enter maybe even different rooms or you travel to different places, I certainly pick up different vibes, if you will. And I kept telling my husband, I'm like, oh my gosh, I wish we could have stayed here like 2 more days because I got such a cozy, like the people there are so nice. It was like a
It's
cozy
very
and
friendly.
yes,
Yeah.
like I said, I mean, even the people, even though it was like one day that we were basically there, I just felt so comfortable there. And I told him, I was like, man, we have to literally make a trip now for Virginia, perhaps next year, who knows?
It
But
will welcome you, I'm sure.
I'm serious, but it was such an incredible experience, both places for that matter. But transitioning into just the topic or the discussion of West Virginia, that is literally where you got your start in academia. You are currently now with Virginia Tech. Really focusing on shaping the future of public health research. And I wanted to lay this foundation because I think it's so incredibly important is to like basically lead you up to the book. But
Mhm.
you have an incredible background, Dr. Horn, secured funding for over 50 plus research projects, authored 160 plus scientific publications, and you've been featured Time, CNN, Psychology Today, USA Today. So could you please walk us through this journey, this academic journey? And did you always know that you wanted to go into the realm of public health research?
I mean, honestly, no, I didn't. I'm first generation college, and I didn't have a blueprint, but I had a whole heck of a lot of support from my family to pursue my dreams. And I think I've always been very curious, and maybe even though I didn't have an academic career in mind, I've probably always been a bit of a professor, as my family would probably testify to that. Um, but yeah, because I've always been driven by curiosity, I think it was very important to me to have the educational tools to answer some of the questions that had just always been burning in my mind. And I started out as a social worker in more in like child protective services, and I just saw repeated cycles of generational poverty and substance use disorder and addiction. And at a certain point, I realized that there weren't. I didn't feel like there were sufficient tools and services and solutions in place that that really resonated with me. And so I decided to go back to school and pursue higher education. And that's when I went to WVU. And again, having that Appalachian focus always been sort of center, and West Virginia University just seemed like a perfect fit to train and to be a part of more just a more integrated part of that. I mean, when you think about public health needs and public health issues and concerns, there are fewer regions in the country, and in some cases the world, that have more needs than Appalachia. So I pursued a doctoral degree there, and decided to go to really specialize in the interface of public health and mental health and health outcomes. And again, began to focus more deeply on underserved communities and addiction. And that's where everything really started to come together. And it was very timely at that point, too, because you know, so many aspects of addiction. I mean, we had some of the very first uptick in opioid use disorder, tobacco, and other areas of health concerns that were really escalating, at that point when I was getting my doctorate. So it was right there. So it was timing too, right? I mean, it was passion, and it was timing, and it was, I think, just where I was supposed to be.
I think this is incredible because when you talk about passion, I mean, your passion truly shines through with developing policy programs. I want to mention before we even get to the book, you were involved in a globally recognized youth tobacco cessation initiative in partnership with the American Lung Association. And then you were also involved, just as you had mentioned, you have been widely praised with your efforts in Appalachia to fight the opioid crisis, really helping communities. If you could just walk us through that whole journey, what
Yeah,
you
sure.
maybe, yeah, just discovered in these communities and how it maybe how it developed you also with like personal growth, what you learned about yourself through this process.
Sure. I think back on my early days in at WVU, and uh, right around the time I got my finished my doctorate, and um, tobacco use rates among teens were at an all-time high. I mean, we were especially in the Appalachian region, we were approaching 40 to 50% of adolescents were using some sort of tobacco at that point. So, addiction wasn't something that people really liked to talk about, especially as it relates to kids. And teachers were frustrated, physicians, all healthcare workers were frustrated because there were no tools to help kids. I mean, who would have thought that we needed tools to help kids stop smoking? But we did. And it was an area that I was very interested in. Again, going back to my passion for using my education to and my research to create tools and solutions and services. I mean, we can write papers all the time. We can write papers. There's always something to say. And I think it's especially important when we can translate that to something that's tangible and practical, can be put into place. Well, at that point, I had some research funding from the Centers for Disease Control, and they were also keenly aware of the escalating tobacco epidemic with kids. The American Lung Association had been in touch with them, and it just happened that we convened a meeting and decided to collaborate. And we put together this program and created studies around it and tested it around what we wanted to do. I'll just say this real quickly. A lot of times, as you know, studies take years and years. And so you might have a really incredible tool. And we see this in clinical trials. You might have a really incredible tool, but because the science hasn't been done yet, it doesn't get out into the community. So one of my stipulations for doing this, that we created a hybrid model so that we could test and use at the same time. And we did that. CDC agreed to it. The American Lung Association agreed to it. And we were able to get a program out while studying it and make adjustments as we went based on the teen voice and the teen input and the feedback that we got from all over the country. And here we are. I used to say, wouldn't it be incredible if I worked myself out of a job? And this program, I'm happy to say that the Not on Tobacco program has been around for now over 20 years. We just recently celebrated our 2025 year anniversary. And I'm happy to say that there's much less need for this program now. Rates are down to around 10%. So I guess I manifested some sort of truth in a way. And it's been used around the world. And it is the most used and the most tested teen tobacco cessation program in the world. So that was just an incredible journey. And that was really one of my first initiatives to understand what it means to do something that is grounded in the community. And to know that when you listen to the voices of the people you intend to serve, your solutions are much more effective.
So true. And I just have to commend you for, as you had mentioned, all the extensive research that you have done, but to also translate it into programs, initiatives, and changing policy that really does, as you had mentioned, affects and positively affects lives all over the world.
Yeah,
I mean, that is something. So, big congratulations
thank
on
you.
how everything over the past 20 years has really just kind of panned out, helping individuals and communities. So, that's tremendous.
Yeah. It really was a career highlight. Uh, and to know that, at the time too, because people really didn't believe in it, they wanted oftentimes school systems needed to stick to academics. Because time is precious and there are standards and those sorts of things, and putting supplemental programs into place was very difficult. But because we had studies showing effectiveness, because we had, the backing of big organizations like the American Lung Association, schools are really willing to revisit their policies. So, the point being that I think when you develop effective tools that are community driven, that are based on real needs, not just something we want to test for the heck of it, for fun, or to answer some question that we have in our mind that is not really that important. Um, I think that those are the kinds of community driven, listening to the voices of our community that can really have impact, deep impact.
That is so true. Speaking of community and connection for that matter, your book, I just want to reiterate this once again. The timing of this book is absolutely impeccable. The epidemic, of course, as we know, declared back in 2023 by former US Surgeon General Dr. Vivek Murthy on isolation and loneliness. And your book, I just want to present this too. I dressed appropriately for this book too.
Thank you. I see that. I love that.
Had to, Dr. Horn, but I cannot commend you enough. A fabulous book. You wrote with so much passion in it. And I had mentioned to you, I think it was in the review that I had wrote, but you were that friend literally walking me through. I felt comfortable with even the scenarios. I was like, yes, I've experienced that within a friendship. Or yes, when I'm trying to make new friends, I feel this way. So you really make your readers feel at home. So I would love for
Happy to hear
you,
that.
yes, just to speak about what inspired you to
Yeah.
write this book.
Yeah. So I think I can connect some dots between this backstory I've told and where I am now as an author. I mean, sometimes it outwardly appears like kind of a circuitous journey, but it really isn't when I go back and think through my story. But back during the pandemic, as when I when I went from WVU to George Washington University, where I was a research dean there, and then decided to go to Virginia Tech and really dive a little bit deeper back into my research and in the Appalachian region. So, one of the things that was a pressing crisis at that point was the opioid crisis. And um, shortly after I arrived back in Virginia and at Virginia Tech, the COVID-19 pandemic set in. And during that time period, having started some community based initiatives around the opioid crisis, we saw, obviously the isolation around COVID-19 hit everyone hard, and it hit our 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 addiction community and the folks in recovery especially hard. And the overdose rates just spiked to unheard of levels at that point. And I really saw, people were cut off from their treatment services. They were cut off from their friends. They were cut off from their family. They were cut off from their peers who may have been supporting them. So it was extremely difficult time. And I really started to see, not that I always had an awareness. My studies were consistently showed that social support and connection is a critical part of health and health outcomes. That was always steady in my findings. Now, when COVID-19 hit, I really saw those findings playing out all around me in real time. And then thinking about, how can we address this? And I started to really, it hit me that we never really treat connection or friendship or support as a health intervention. And I I didn't want to do a study about it or to write a paper about it, because I felt like, if we're really honest, like, the only people who really read our academic papers are people like us, really, other academics. So I wanted to write something or do something that would reach the masses, that would reach a lot of people. And I knew that an academic journal was not the place. And of course, we all had a little more time to think during the pandemic. And I started seeing what I call this double demic. We had, with particularly people in recovery, we had this escalation of addiction and we had escalation of loneliness. And I just felt this urgency to do something, because not only was I seeing this, play out in health consequences with my population that I was working with professionally, but it was playing out everywhere. My, friends, family, in our community. It was just, it was a time of of emotional crisis as well for people. And so I was thinking of that okay, what is one thing that we're really missing here during this time period? It's we're missing our friends. We're missing our connection. And we need to figure out how we get back to that. And then so, I really feel like friendship is an antidote to loneliness, but it's something we don't talk about that much, and it's something that we can not be, if we don't do it well, we struggle with it. And people, we're friendship is not linear. We all have different journeys on how we have friends, become friends, treat our friends. And I think particularly after the pandemic, we lost some of our social skills. So I decided that, perhaps I could write a book that would help us get back to that would help us regain that, or be just a practical way to talk about loneliness.
First off, I want to say how your journey has connected is truly unbelievable. Like you said, Even when COVID happened, and we're talking now, of course, of connection, friendships, but you spoke about addiction. I didn't even think to look in that direction of how that could be affecting people, like the isolation and loneliness affecting those in addiction. And then as you would move forward, I could see the connection, literally, not to be so cliche
Yeah,
here,
yeah, yeah.
how this literally would pan out with writing a book and an impactful book. I mean, as you mentioned, when it comes to friendship, we were speaking a little bit earlier too, but it seems like after college, making friends past that point is like, at least from my experience, it's more difficult and
Just
you're like,
comment. Yeah,
yes, thank you for making me feel good.
yeah.
Because it really is like, you think about college, like, okay, everybody goes, or, generally speaking, should I say, but everybody goes to the same places on Friday night. You're always in groups. You're always, going to this academic club, this, just hang out. But once you go past college, everybody goes in their different directions. Some people start families earlier than others. And it really is. It's like that kind of in between time, like during your 20s, you're trying to figure out where you fit in. And so I'm just so happy you mention it so many times, like in the book, where I felt I was walking alongside of a friend saying, "It's okay, Courtney. People go through this." And I'm like, yes. You make your readers just feel so comfortable. I just have
Oh,
to let you know that.
that's wonderful to hear. I mean, regardless of where you are in life, what your path is in life, your financial status, you know, your race, ethnicity, gender, whatever. I mean, friendship is a resource that's available to almost everyone. I mean, no one's going to be blocked out of that. I mean, it would be rare. I mean, I'm sure there are circumstances, but it is something that is available to cultivate for almost everyone. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to force access to it. It is it is accessible, and that was what was so important to me because I've seen so many of the populations that I've worked with over the years be shut out, blocked out, cut out, eliminated from different types of resources. And so I think, well, friendship is available. It is accessible to almost everyone if we do it well. And some people don't know how to do it well. So let's teach them.
I just love this. And this really brings us, I have to bring up, this was one of my favorite quotes in the book, Dr. Horn. Okay, so I quote, "I believe friendships are the bedrock of connections, conduits for spreading love, fostering belonging, and facilitating mutual understanding that is healing and empowering." I just thought it really wraps up friendship in such a meaningful way. And so I was curious if you could elaborate on that quote.
Yeah, sure. I believe that was in the introduction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, for me, it was really thinking about how we blend both research and lived experience, or at least for me, how I blended my research and my science background with what I've seen in my own life. And I know that I've watched friendships get people through cancer diagnosis and job losses and cross country moves and caregiver roles, like a lot of the really difficult transitions in life. And I think that friendship co-regulates us, right? I mean, it co-regulates our nervous system. I mean, if you and I are friends and we're talking and we're feeling good like we're feeling right now, I mean, it helps us both regulate our nervous systems, and we are being conduits for each other. I mean, it enhances our sense of belonging and our sense of being seen and identity. It's a protective factor that I think is really overlooked.
I love how you really do. You focus not only just on the concept of connection, but then also into, of course, friendship, which is the whole book. And I wanted to I wanted to focus on, which is so true, just like as we had mentioned, a lot of people really do struggle with developing friendships within adulthood. Could you maybe either provide just like maybe some advice if somebody is struggling right now? What could they like proactively do, or just in general, just to help them?
Yeah. So I think that, first of all, I want to validate that everybody feels disconnected sometimes. We all feel a little off in our friendship sometimes, or doubt, or I call that sort of friendship insecurity from time to time. And so I I, I want to say that if you're feeling that way, you're not alone in that, because it happens to just about everybody. So, and it might manifest in, maybe you're feeling like you're drifting, or maybe you're avoiding phone calls, or you found yourself saying no when someone reaches out to make plans with you. So there, and I think that signals of things going on in your life, that probably need some attention. But it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be like that, and it certainly doesn't have to. Reconnecting with someone doesn't have to involve a grand gesture, right? I mean, sometimes it's just those, I call them, sort of micro moments of connection. And research shows that when we connect with people, even in micro ways, that we get a boost of those feel good hormones, even the micro connection. If maybe you send someone a text message just saying, hey, I've missed our talks, I'd love to catch up, or do you have time for just 10 minutes to talk, this week sometime? Or, maybe it's you send them a photo of the two of you together and just say, this popped up in my feed and it just made me think about you and I miss you. Or just those small things. And the chances are that you're going to get a warmer response from them than you expected. And most of the time, people are happy because they were just waiting for someone else to reach out. Be the one who initiates.
I love that because, I think about as you were speaking, friendship, even, it reminds me, it really does, it takes effort. And I think where I struggled was when I was consistently in these academic programs where you really are like you're confined to just solid research, you in a book or you in a
Right.
computer. And I do feel like when you talk about like kind of being like floating adrift, you really do have to be very intentional, I think. But when you talk about even just sending a simple text message, how that could even benefit you when you hear their response, oh, I was thinking
100%.
about you too. I'm glad you had reached out. I love that you mentioned that.
I mean, yeah, friendships are organic, right? I mean, you have um, an organic foundation with people often, even if it's something that's a new spark of a friendship, or something that's been around a long time. But organic doesn't mean effortless. Friendships do take some effort and intention. And like you said, it's just sometimes it doesn't have to be a big one. Sometimes a smaller gesture can mean a lot. And we all, like I said, we all have that friendship insecurity. It's like, gosh, I want to text, what if I text them and they don't text me back? And did I do something wrong? What if could I said, God, maybe I said the wrong thing last time we talked? Or, I mean, we do this, right? I mean, we do this to ourselves, and then we criticize ourselves and we doubt ourselves. The other person's probably doing the same thing.
Dr. Horn, this is why I loved your book because there was so many times exactly what you're saying. And I will certainly show my face as you were speaking because I had these aha moments like, you're right. Am I overthinking too much? Does anybody else do this? And when you make your readers just feel so comfortable that it's normal, or yes, other people do experience this, it made me look at friendship in a completely different way, like more through a positive lens that I had, because it was like, is there something wrong with you, Court? Like, like I said, should I have been maybe more proactive during those times? And it was difficult. You were just so focused. And, I think you could, like, looking back in hindsight, I could have probably taken better action or more just proactive action, even if it was a simple text message. But that's what I loved about your book. I have to mention that.
Well, thank you. And one of the things I emphasize, Courtney, is that yes, my book is based in science and research, but also lived experience. So, the anecdotes, some of the examples, me too. Me too.
It was like the scenarios and like the reflections of how to reignite a friendship and how you walk your readers through that, I think was so beautiful because it's one thing to mention research, but then it's also another thing to really help the reader take like action. How can they pull this knowledge that's in this book into their life, their real life, like with their friends? And that's what I admired about this book. It was the solid evidence of research, but then it was also, here's what you could do. Here's a scenario. Has this ever happened to you? And that's why I really loved your structure and your framework, which literally brings me to my next question here. But you had 8 friendship tenets, and I was curious if maybe you could just speak about like one or two where somebody could, yes, just help others.
Yeah, so the book is based on a dynamic framework of friendship that involves 8 tenets. And that's the science part of me coming out, how to create a framework, right?
Absolutely.
But with the framework, I mean, we have a lot of social and behavioral theories that explain why we do what we do. And I mean, no one really wants to read about theory. And, as a psychologist, I really started to break down and look at those theories and make them consumable because there's so many overlapping um, constructs and themes that run through theories. And so I started to look for the common elements. And I basically, long story short, teased out 8 of them that were overlapping with a range of theories that could be consumable for people. And I think I'll let the listeners hopefully get the book so that they can explore the tenets all the tenets more deeply. But I think right now, if I had to pull out, um, so there are the 8 tenets just real quickly. So there's recognizing, communicating, accepting, blending, safeguarding, reciprocating, recalibrating, and self-friending. If I had to pick out 2 or 3 that I think are really resonating in today's world with people, uh, I won't go too deeply into that. One of the tenets that I'm asked about a lot is recalibrating, and that means how we reevaluate our friendships. And I think particularly post-COVID and in today's current political climate, a lot of people are recalibrating their friendships. And that might look like adjusting your expectations for a friendship. It might look like having a hard conversation about where the friendship is and where you want it to go. It might include stepping back. And I think that people are sharing with me that more than ever, they are recalibrating their friendships. So that's one that I think is resonating with people. The other one is reciprocating. With burnout being really high right now, I think that people are realizing that friendship needs to feel mutual and that one sided friendships can't really sustain themselves. When you start feeling like you're always the one initiating, you're always the one reaching out, and you're always supporting with no one ever asking you how you are, and and you start to resent it, then that is a time to really think about and reevaluate that friendship. Now, sometimes we get in that role, right? I mean, that's just a role we take. I know I'm one of those people who's an initiator, and I accept that about myself. I'm also aware that there is a threshold at which I could start to get resentful, and I have to pay attention to that.
I love both of those points that you make, and I wanted to speak about the recalibrating after COVID. Did you see when you speak about like people coming up to you and sharing like that was like an excellent point? Are they are they now coming more back into the friendship and wanting that connection, or is it more of actually the opposite? Like, what exactly are you?
So I think that there are two scenarios. I think after COVID, I saw that recalibration involved more of people reconnecting in ways that they had not for a while. Like maybe they regretted having let a friendship lapse into that quiet drift. And they wanted to figure out ways to recalibrate it so that it was stronger. Of late, around the political climate, I'm seeing people are telling me more about recalibrating toward letting go,
So interesting.
right?
So I'm sorry, I'm just digesting all of this.
Yeah. Having to step away, particularly around political differences.
Wow. Okay, if we open up the lens, just say, I don't know, like 4 or 5 years down the road, because it seems like kind of just like the timing of all this, but uh what would you hope for that would be able to like really help people
Yeah.
with isolation and loneliness? Like, if we see it moving so drastic every, couple years, what do you hope for in this?
Well, I mean, I think that uh, so if I'm talking about the recalibration issue, what I hope for, particularly as I see people moving away from people that they love and care about. I mean, that when we move away from people that we really do love and care about, that just perpetuates loneliness and disconnection. What I hope for is that we can get back to a place where we can have some meaningful dialogue that will mend some of those gaps and allow us to um, understand that yes, we have differences. And that doesn't mean that we can never have a relationship again. 70% of people are feeling political stress right now, and over a third have stopped spending time with friends and family of differing views. And I'm not talking about strangers, I'm talking about people choosing not to spend time with people that they have a history with, that they love and care about. And that's painful. That's painful for people to, I mean, because those are connections. Those are real connections that people are losing and not necessarily making up for. So, my hope, if I'm speaking to that issue, my hope is that we can get back to a dialogue. Now, I understand that some people have to let go and you have to step back and hit pause. And I'm okay with that if that is something people need to do to protect themselves and their peace. I also hope that at some point, if it's someone you love and care about, that you can get to a place where you can have meaningful dialogue that feels it's a place where you can feel safe and heard and trust that the relationship can come back into your life in an important way.
Excellent points. When you were talking about just the word dialogue, I have been talking, even when I created Plenty of Positivity here, it was not even just about the positivity, but it was about bringing people back together, building that positive
Yeah.
community through communication and connection. And what's interesting is as you speak about dialogue, it seems as if the pendulum, if you will, has swung from one side to the other, where it's either yes or no. It's either this side of the political spectrum or this side. And I say this because, just to your very point, why why can't we have just dialogue, even if one disagrees with the other, but to be able to respect their point of view and to have, I mean, very good conversations that, in my opinion, I think opinions could definitely change over time. Like, if you bring certain evidence forward that is deeply compelling, is research backed, hey, the light bulb in my head may be like, Courtney, that's a very good point. You should look into. And I don't know, like, when you talk about that dialogue, I got so excited when you said that word, because I've never understood why we cannot just have really respectful conversations, even if in fact we disagree. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I'm going to take a quick sip of water here. But I have What I have been sharing with people is basically maybe a three options.
Hmm.
When you find yourself with someone you love and care about, and you are so far apart, because this is fracturing families, it's fracturing friendships. It is a part of our daily life, really. So around the holidays and gatherings and those sorts of things. So what I've said to people is you have three choices. One, you can choose, to set some boundaries, and you don't have to have a conversation about it. You can just say we can get together and we're going to focus on the things that bond us. We're going to focus on our shared history, and there are certain things that are just off topic. Rules that I have implemented in my own family and with friends. They're just certain topics that are we don't discuss, and we focus on our shared history and the things that we do and enjoy together. The second option is to agree to have a discussion with someone. And it doesn't not necessarily at the family gathering or when with a group of friends that have conflicting views, but maybe a private one-on-one, with some ground rules and a safe space that you both agree we're gonna talk about this topic, and maybe sandwich it. I call it the sandwich approach. You start with a layer that's positive, you talk about the hard stuff, and then you wrap it up with something positive. Okay, so and you set a time on it, right? And you have some rules. See where it goes, and agree that if at any point either one of you are feeling uncomfortable, then you can stop it. The third option is if you've already tried one and two, or maybe the circumstances are just so toxic and so harsh that you have to put a pause on it. And and that's barring um, any sort of abusive situation. I mean, to me, that's a non-starter. Well, I'm not even talking about that. But there are situations where you just sometimes just, hey, I've got to put a pause on this person for right now. And sometimes that doesn't require a big explanation either. It just happens, and it's okay.
I love this. I love the fact that you are able to have different options that people really can apply to their own lives to be able to come back to one another. Like you said, it may just be distance for just a little bit of time, just to kind of have that breather, but then also to setting those expectations. I am willing to talk about this topic of conversation, but the positive, negative, positive, it's really interesting that you mentioned that. I have actually, when I was coaching in gymnastics, that was the mentality I would always take when providing like constructive feedback is I would offer them the positive on that next skill, like that they did something positive. Then we would talk about, okay, we need to improve on maybe, tightening your arms on that skill. And then you always follow up with the positive. So it leaves the person with a good feeling about the conversation.
Yes, yes. And it gets back to your point of dialogue. I mean, I think that if we don't have dialogue, even if we're not in full agreement, how are we going to understand each other?
So true. And that's why communication, I feel like today is so important. Honestly, I feel like more so than ever coming out of COVID, that isolation and loneliness, but being able to communicate with people, like I said, the emotions that come with it, but being respectful of others and maybe certain things that they've gone through and understand kind of, what it makes me think of the word and how powerful it is today, but empathy, understanding what one has gone through and being able to share that communication with them to make them feel okay. And my question for you with this book, with the epidemic of isolation and loneliness in 23, and as we move forward, are you seeing perhaps and I know we kind of spoke about it a little bit with like the
Yeah.
political landscape, but are you seeing anything that you would like to significantly see get better, or are you seeing positive change that has come out since 2023? Just your thoughts on that.
Well, I was, the the Surgeon General came out, as you said, in 2023 with the report on loneliness, and then this past May followed that with an update on the importance of social connection and making investments in those solutions. I'd like to think that my book can be a part of those menu of solutions. But we have to have action because recommendations without action just, they fall flat. So I think it's very important that we um, think about the types of things that we can integrate very deeply into our community, and then starting at a very early age with children on how to institute the skills to prevent loneliness. I mean, with there, as you talked about, there's loneliness is the research that's come out, I think now is indisputable, and people are paying attention to that. I mean, we have, over a 30% increase of heart disease and stroke and dementia and, depression in people who are lonely. And certain populations are certainly more at risk than others, as we've discussed. So I think that I like to think of, our social health is another pillar of health. I mean, we should treat it just as we do sleep and nutrition and exercise. And it's a vital sign. And I hope that we can get to a place and where we can think about loneliness connection more as a part of our overall well-being. I think we're getting there, but I think there are some things that can happen institutionally that could help move that forward. But I think we're getting closer to having those kinds of discussions.
Oh, this is excellent, and it's so good to hear. Like I said, we are moving in the right direction.
Yeah, I
Is
think so. Yeah, yeah.
I think that gives us all hope, for that matter. um, so I do want to bring up, like I said, you have just had so much success within academia with this book. I'm so curious, Dr. Horn, what is next for you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I want to continue speaking about the importance of connection in our health, and I'm especially interested in working with organizations and communities with populations that are more vulnerable than others. And I obviously have a passion for the recovery community, but I think that there are, certain conversations, important conversations that need to happen around workplace connection. Um, those who are going through major life transitions. I mean, there are certain points in life where friendship is particularly difficult, and be it the immediately post college group to empty nesters to people who are, on the getting ready to retire to people who have relocated. I mean, there are these critical points where friendship is there's a friendship vulnerability that is more critical to address than others. I mean, it's important all the time, but that's why I talk about the dynamic framework. I mean, friendship is dynamic. It changes, it moves, it grows with us. And we have to learn to adjust to those types of transitions as we move through life. But I created a new assessment tool for the dynamic friendship self-assessment tool, which I hope to start getting out there a little bit more, and probably another book, but I'm not quite sure. That's to be determined. I'm not quite sure what the topic is yet. There's so many things to grab onto.
This is so exciting. I will definitely have your next book if you choose to go in that direction because, well, and to your point, I think that's why I resonated with this book so much is I never nobody ever told me, not that they were supposed to, whoever they is, but after college that your life really was that your friendships were going to take a change. Like I said, people were going to go in different directions, but I never really thought it through. And so when I look back in hindsight to have this conversation, I've been so grateful for, but to hear, no, people sometimes struggle with that. It's so inviting to think, wow, okay, during my 20s, that was not so abnormal, if you will, of readjusting. And like you said, going through your life at different points in time that your friendships will change. just hearing that words of advice, that's why this book, I'm sure, is resonating with so many people out there, because nobody really teaches you about that. Nobody says, you know what, Courtney, after college, some things are actually going to change. Being in a group on Friday night, that's not always going to happen. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So that's why
Well, we're not taught social skills. I mean, generally we are not, and that's one of the things I think that we could do to better institutionalize this is just let's teach friendship literacy at a very early age. And and while I'm talking about that, I think adults can use some friendship tune-ups too in our social skills. I mean, I know that writing this book helped me brush up on my social skills. So, um, there's no harm in it. It can only do good if we are better skilled for our social health.
I think that's excellent. And it brings up even the topic of self awareness and being able to reflect. Like you said, just as you were probably writing this book, as I was reading this book, I was reflecting on my friendships and even my newer friendships too, how
Sure.
to move those along as well. So Dr. Horn, this has been an absolutely fantastic podcast episode. I would love to end with a positive message. It could be a quote, it could be a
Yeah,
phrase
sure.
for the community.
Well, I mean, one of my favorite quotes is from Maya Angelou, and that people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you make them feel. And I think that at the end of the day, that friendship is about emotional presence and it is healing. And it's the kind of presence that we all deserve and one that we can all offer.
I love ending this podcast episode with that quote. I think it's such a powerful quote because you're right. Years could go by, but just reminding yourself when that one experience happened, how did you feel? How did that group make you feel? I
Mm,
think that's absolutely beautiful to sum
yeah.
this up. Dr. Horn, thank you so much for coming on this podcast,
Thank
sharing
you.
knowledge, your wisdom. A big congratulations once again
Thank you.
on Friends Matter for Life
Thank you.
book. Thank you, Dr.
I'm so grateful our paths crossed, and I think there's more to come.
Can't wait, Dr. Horn. I'm so
Yeah,
incredibly grateful. Thank you.
you too. Thank you.